Is green over? It's an important question because it does appear as though there is a massive commercial backlash against the whole idea of green energy, sustainability, and everything else that might make future life on this planet possible. The best possible example at present comes from BP, which was, of course, once British Petroleum, which over the last 5 years was trying to reposition itself as a green energy company with some apparent success in the eyes of most people, but which greatly upset some hedge fund and private equity investors in the company who staged a massive campaign to demand that the company went back to its roots and focused on oil production. And a new chief executive has now said that's exactly what BP is going to do. It's going to cut its green investment program by 70%. And it's going to increase its oil production by more than $10 billion. This is its short-term plan. And I think that's a really important point. This is a short-term plan because we are seeing a conflict being played out here. BP is a perfect example of a large multinational company that pretends to operate in accordance with the principles of microeconomics, even though it is very obviously a macroeconomic entity in the sense that what it does has major consequence for the countries where it operates, including the UK, but many others as well. The choices it makes do have an impact, not just on our economy, but on our very lives. And what we are seeing is that the right choices that it was making, which were to go green, to promote sustainability, to drive towards energy production from sustainable sources, and to also move towards an energy reduction program, are all disappearing. Instead, it is going for the old neoliberal profit maxim that says, pile those dollars high, because like most oil companies, it is the dollar that BP is worried about most of all, and they are ignoring everything else. They're ignoring us and the fact that we might want to survive whatever BP is doing. The management of BP are even ignoring their own children and grandchildren because the legacy of the destruction that they are going to wreak is going to be seen in the lives of those children and grandchildren, unless, of course, they think that they can buy their way out of the consequences of climate change, which makes them very stupid indeed. There's also the fact that they are ignoring the consequences for the planet. Microeconomics suggests that entities like BP, claiming that they are just small companies who do not have an impact upon the world around them, can ignore what are called externalities. This is obviously not true, not least because BP is not a microeconomic entity, as I've already explained. It has macroeconomic consequences because it is so big. It cannot ignore its externalities. That is the price of climate change that is the result of its production of oil and the pollution that it also generates. Those things are issues which should be of concern to it. They should be accounted for inside its own financial statements. Their cost of becoming net zero should be recognised in those accounts. But none of this is done at present. It is as if we are pretending that the world is going to carry on as normal when we know full well that in pure scientific terms, the evidence is overwhelming that this is something we cannot do. We are suffering climate change. We are going to have to change our behaviour. We have to reduce our oil consumption. And yet BP is turning a blind eye to all of that, purely in the interests of a few hedge fund managers who want to maximise their own profits. And the economic logic that lets them do this is a bizarre technique that is used by economic theorists, which is called discounting. What they do is pretend that there is no such thing as a future. What they suggest is that all the cash flows that arise in the future, for whatever the reason, can be discounted at an interest rate to suggest that they actually happen now. As a result, the future consequence of any current action is, they suggest, reflected in the overall value of the entity that they're looking at, And their argument is that BP's total value is increased if it produces oil in the future, and therefore this is what matters. But that logic of pretending the future does not exist, which this economics suggests to be the case, is obviously wrong. We all know the future does exist. We know we are going to live in it. We know our children will live in it. We know our grandchildren and their children will live in it. And so why are we letting companies like BP and many others around the world who are following the move to the far right, which Donald Trump is leading the whole world of corporations towards, why is it that we are letting them get away with that? I don't know. I really don't understand why it is that we should tolerate this. My nearest garage is a BP station. Am I going to buy from there anymore? Or do I want to try to find an alternative? Although, let's be honest, Shell is not a lot better. But do we want to, in some way, make our position clear? Where we can we exercise consumer choice to say, green does matter, we do want a sustainable future, deliver it to us, and we should be letting our politicians know that. We do know that in the USA there is an enormous backlash against Trump and Musk already. It's being seen in town hall meetings where Republican politicians are getting a really strong kickback against what they're doing. Around the world, we need to do that kickback against everything that this agenda is promoting, from the end of press freedom to the destruction of government services to, in this case, the literal future burning of the planet, which is being promoted by companies who no longer give a damn about our well-being and only care about profit. Green does matter. The world's corporations are pretending it doesn't. We're in conflict with them. They are quite literally a threat to humankind. And that threat is one that we have to eliminate if we are to survive.